before Beatlemania, before the Lennon-McCartney partnership, even before the Beatles existed with that name. There was a fragile, crackling recording cut in a tiny Liverpool studio by 5 teenagers on a single microphone, pressed straight onto a disc. It was the first song ever recorded by the Beatles' core members, Lennon, McCartney, and Harrison. Not only that, it is the only song ever credited solely to Paul McCartney and George Harrison, and it remained lost to public awareness for decades. This is the story of In Spite of All the Danger. In the summer of 1958, the Quarrymen, a local skiffle band, stepped into Philips Sound recording service in Kensington, Liverpool. They were led by John Lennon, with Paul McCartney, George Harrison, pianist John Duff Lowe, and drummer Colin Hanton.
Actually, this was pre-Beatles. This was John, George, and myself, and a couple other guys, a pianist called Duff and Colin, the drummer. And we went down to a little studio in Kensington in Liverpool, and we paid £1 each to make this little shellac recording.
Percy Phillips, a self-taught engineer, ran the recording studio in the middle room of his Victorian terraced house. He had an electrical goods shop in the front, and at the back was the family home.
First thing we ever recorded was That'll Be the Day, Buddy Holly song, and one of Paul's called In Spite of All the Danger. And somewhere, it might be around, it's in Liverpool, some of that record. That's the actual first recording we ever made.
The recording cost the group 17 shillings and 3 pence and was pressed directly onto a 10-inch aluminum and acetate disc to be played at 78 revolutions per minute. The studio logbook recorded the session simply as Skiffle, 10-inch, double-sided, direct. In the book The Complete Beatles Recording Sessions by Mark Lewisohn, Paul McCartney recalls the session. We waited in the little waiting room outside while somebody else made their demo, and then it was our turn. We just went into the room, hardly saw the fella because he was next door in a little control booth. We ran through it very quickly, quarter of an hour, and it was all over. The moment has been immortalized in the film Nowhere Boy, a 2009 biopic of John Lennon's youth. John sang the lead voice, channeling Elvis, while Paul harmonized. George played the opening guitar in the solo that would put him in the song credits. Just 3 days later, Lennon's mother Julia would be killed in a road accident, a detail that, in retrospect, gives this moment an almost unbearable emotional weight. In Spite of All the Danger is unique in the Beatles' catalog for one remarkable reason. It's the only song credited solely to McCartney-Harrison. This unlikely partnership is better understood in the context of the early years of their friendship. Paul and George had known each other for some time, before George was introduced to John and to the Quarrymen.
George and I lived very near each other in Liverpool. So, in fact, we were just a bus stop away from each other. I'd get on the bus, and then the stop afterwards, George would get on. So being quite close in age, we'd sit together and we'd talk about stuff and that.
They shared their passion for music, for guitars and chords. In fact, the B7 chord in Spite of All the Danger may have come from what Paul has described as a musical goose chase, where he and George tried to learn new chords in the early years.
Sometimes we'd travel the whole of Liverpool just to go to someone who knew a chord we didn't know. Remember once hearing about a bloke who knew B7. We didn't know B7, that was kind of the missing part of the link, the other chord, the lost chord. So on we got on the bus, trooped across Liverpool, changed a couple of buses, found this fella, and he showed us dum, 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 B7. We learned it off him, got back on the bus, went home to our mates and went, zing, got it.
Although the song credit is shared, Paul has claimed that he wrote the song. It says on the label that it was me and George, but I think it was actually written by me. And George played the guitar solo. We were mates, and nobody was into copyrights and publishing. Nobody understood. Pianist John Duff Lowe remembers. Even at the rehearsal at his house in Fortland Road, Paul was quite specific about how he wanted it played and what he wanted the piano to do. There was no question of improvising. We were told what we had to play. There was a lot of arranging going on even back then. Paul has said, "It's very similar to an Elvis song. It's me doing an Elvis." Most commentators conclude that the Presley song used by McCartney as a model was "Trying to Get to You."
I've been traveling over miles.
The band was left with only one copy of the recording, and the plan was simple. Each band member would keep it for 1 week.
So I had it for a week, John had it for a week, George had it for a week, and Duff had it for 23 years.
While that fragile disc sat quietly in Duff Lowe's possession, the world moved on. The Quarrymen became the Beatles. They crossed the Channel and survived Hamburg. They honed their craft at the Cavern. Brian Epstein entered the story. Ringo joined. A record contract followed, then a first #1. They conquered Britain, then America, then the world. Beatlemania erupted. They stopped touring and retreated into the studio, where they made history again and again, redefining popular music and culture. And then it was over. Through all of this, through fame, revolution, and loss, that small acetate from 1958 still existed, unchanged, preserving the moment where it all began. By 1981, Duff Lowe had treasured the disc for 23 years and was considering putting it up for auction. Paul McCartney intervened and decided to purchase it himself. They reached a private settlement, resulting in Paul purchasing the acetate for a confidential sum. The lost recording had come home. McCartney had engineers restore the record's sound quality, and then made approximately 50 copies of the single that he gave as personal gifts to family and friends, including George and Ringo. In 2004, Record Collector magazine named the original pressing as the most valuable record in existence, estimating its worth at £100,000, with the 1981 copies made by Paul coming in second on the list at £10,000 each. By 2023, that value had doubled. The lost recording finally reached the public when it appeared on Anthology 1 in 1995. For the very first time, an official Beatles release credited a song to McCartney and Harrison. By 2005, Paul McCartney did something extraordinary. He brought In Spite of All the Danger back, into stadiums, into arenas, in front of tens of thousands.
And we were just a young band trying to get noticed, so we wanted to make a demo record. And this song is the first song that we ever recorded. In spite of all the pain.
A song he wrote at 14 or 15 years old is now sung by a man in his 80s. What began as a teenage experiment has become an emotional bridge across a lifetime.